What's everyone's Matt Morozic, and this is a long overdue update on the Hulk vs. Thor prototype. So for those of you who have been waiting for this and asking for it, yes, the project is still going on. Yes, I've had the prototype for an extremely long time, and now I'm finally getting back onto it. So I think I mentioned in a few videos before, I got the prototype, I kind of got to start working on it, and shortly after I received it, they let me know that they were reworking the short-haired Hulk head. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to wait till I get that new head before I continue, because I don't want to start something, especially skin tones, and try to have to go match them later. So I got the new head probably about a month ago, and at that time I was neck deep in stuff, as I usually am. So here's the new head. So you guys can see that. This one hasn't been primed yet. Here's the old head. This one has been primed in green primer. So main difference is the hair is sculpted. It's like a tighter sculpt. There's more texture in the skin. The facial features have been tightened up a little bit. The hair on this one's much more, I like that way more. This one's kind of slicked back. It almost looks kind of like too pretty boyish. I like the texture in this one a little bit better. So yeah, this has a little tighter details, a little more texture, and the hair's the main difference. So I'm still going to go ahead and paint this head up since I have it. So, but the production pieces only come with 2 heads. So I'll be painting 3, but you're only going to get 2. Okay, so don't get confused when you only get 2. So all I got to do really, first I need to get this guy in some primer. And the guys really liked what I did with the Mad X Hulk. So I'm for the most part going to be repeating the same skin tones. But I think based on what they like and what they've sent me, I'm gonna make it a little more towards the olive green side, just a hair. So first up, I'm gonna put my base coat is Stynylrez Primer Olive Green. That's what you see on the other 2 heads. I've already got the legs and the torso primed. I did that months ago when I first got this, after I gave everything a nice bath. So first step is to prime this new head. Let me get an airbrush that's clean. So I'll use my, nah, I don't need, that's too big for this. I'm just doing one head. So when I do Stynylrez, I crank my PSI up a little bit to around 25 or 30, just because it's thick. You don't need a whole lot, it's one head. And this is an acrylic water-based primer, so you don't need to wear a respirator. I don't when I spray it. So the heads are pretty solid, and it's got a nice strong I need to check the magnet on this. I'm not sure if this magnet matches up with the torso. I haven't tried it yet. So yeah, we're just gonna hit this with some Stynylrez first. Let me tilt this down a little bit. Give me 1 second. So the goal tonight is to basically get the Hulk's skin done, because then I can send pictures of that to get approval. The Mad X Hulk, the skin on that took me 8 hours to paint. Is a big piece. This is smaller, and it's got sculpted pants, so I don't have to worry about painting that area green. So this should, and now I know exactly what I need to do to get that same look. I've got all the colors that, I got my videos. So it's another reason I do my videos. See, I went back and looked at the videos of the Mad X Hulk, the whole work in progress videos, because I don't remember. I'm really bad. I never write stuff down as far as what I've done, because half the times I'm making shit up as I go. So that's how I work. A lot of people are like, oh man, you really know what you're doing. It's like, half the time I don't. I make it up as I go, guys. I just kind of go with the flow. I kind of have an idea of what I want something to look like, and I have a rough idea in my mind of how to get there, and then I start shooting paint. And then if it starts going a different direction, then I adjust. So yeah. I'm gonna just get this guy a nice base coat of this Stynylrez olive green primer. Make sure it's nice and even, because this you will be able to see this color when I'm done. All like just like the Mad X Hulk. It's about 6 different layers of green and shading. Actually, I had to take that back. There's this is 1 layer. Then I've got 2 layers of noodling, so it's 3 layers. Then I do shadows, that's 4 layers. Then I do highlighting, that's 5. Then I do midtones and veins, that's 6. Then I go back in and I hit the shadows a little bit more, that's 7. Yeah, 8 layers to get the green. It's just not one color and then shaded or highlighted. It's several colors, several layers. So the Beast prototype I did, let's see, today is Friday the 16th, January the 16th, 2019. The Beast prototype I did started arriving in collectors' hands on Wednesday. Let's see, this say 16th, 15th, like the 14th. And it got a lot of really good positive feedback, a lot of good reviews. And one thing that people kept bringing up is that they were really surprised at like the number of shades and colors that were in the fur and the base. So, okay, so that's good. That just needs to dry. Actually, I may go back and hit the other pieces again just to make sure that we're all on the same kind of page here, just real quick, just a light coat. So that's one thing I say is that when I paint, it's several layers. It's not just 1 or 2 colors. It's several thin layers of paint, which gives things a lot of depth. And a lot of times you can't see that depth in photos. Even in the photos that I take at the end, where I spend 4 or 5 hours taking final photos, you just can't see it. It's really hard to get those really subtle variations to show up in a photo. One thing I notice about photos from other painters and stuff, to me they look really dark. That's one trick you can do to kind of get that stuff to show up more. You can shoot an underexposed photo. I see a lot of skin, like a lot of photos of Superman and stuff where the photos I think are too dark. But when you shoot them dark, you can see more. That variation does kind of show up more. And the reason is because you're not blowing out the highlights and the midtones. So you know, I try to make sure I expose correctly because it'll give you a better representation of the overall look. But yeah, so. And Sonu, when he got the Mad X Hulk, and he's like, man, this looks. I thought it looked good in photos, and then he got it in person. It's like, man, there's like so many different colors and tones going on in there that you just can't see. And I'm like, yeah, all these thin layers of paint that I use, just give a piece of depth. And it's just kind of, again, using what I used to do and building and painting Gundams. Lots of several layers. Gundams I didn't use quite as many layers. Probably, I'd say the average color would be like 3 layers. There'd be a base. A shadow color would lay down, then a highlight color, and then the main color. I just do more on skin tones and stuff. Okay, so that's done. I'm gonna go grab the feet and the torso real quick, get another layer on those. Okay, I got the feet here. So one thing that is extremely challenging about these big pieces is they're really hard to handle. The Mad X Hulk wasn't too bad once I got the pins in the legs, but this guy, like, his legs are solid and there's nowhere to hold it. So I can hold it by the pants. But when I go to actually paint him, I'll use a clamp on the bottom of the foot, and he'll be able to stand. So I can try to work with him a little easier. I've already, like I said, I've already primed these once. I'm just doing it again real quick, just so if there's any chance of a tonal variation between what I've sprayed on that new head and these, they're all the same. I don't want to, because if that base color's off just a little bit between the pieces, then it's going to be off throughout the whole process. Since I used thin layers of paint, you can see through everything. So that's the reason why I didn't want to do anything else until I got the new head. And they also sent a new Thor head without the helmet. And I thought I remember them saying there was two Thor heads in the beginning, but I only got the one with the helmet when I got shipped the prototype. So yeah, they sent a Thor helmet without a Thor head without the helmet. So you guys will get 2 heads for Thor and 2 for Hulk. So the real challenging part about this whole statue is putting it together. If you watch my intro video where I kind of go over the statue, it's a puzzle on how to get. Again, this is one of those pieces that the sculpt is really cool, and the way it works doesn't look like it should work. As far as like, it doesn't look like it should be molded and be able to be molded and cast and turned to a kit. That's kind of what I like about it. So when you put these together, I'll go over what I suggest, but basically you're going to need to cover Thor in some sort of saran wrap or something to help avoid paint rubbing when you put the cape on, and then when you put Hulk on the base with him. It's just the nature of the statue, because they are so intertwined. You know, some parts are going to rub as you assemble it. Now, the guys in China can use paints that we can't get in the States. So, you know, we have in the States all our paints are lead free. You know, because we like to make sure no one dies from painting. And their paints are still harmful, but they took lead out of paints like in the late 70s, early 80s, I think it was. So like the factories may use like a more durable paint than I have, even though I'm using lacquers and I'm using really high quality stuff. But I wouldn't say it's like industrial, you know, type paint. The automotive clear coat I use would be considered like industrial type paint. It's good stuff, you know. It's meant to be put on your car. All right, so there's a light coat on the feet. And let me go get the torso and do that again. Okay, so the torso is a little more awkward. Again, there's really nowhere to hold this guy. So I have, again, I'm using like one of these, I don't know, it's a clamp. I can't remember what kind of clamp it's called. To kind of basically, I've got a clamp to the bottom that allows me to set it down. Lower my camera a little bit. Okay. So, and also if you remember in my intro video, I ended up, they don't want me to mention it, I'm not going to mention it anyway. I ended up poking a hole in the arm because when I grabbed it, the resin was a little thin there, and they assured me they're going to take care of it. But I went in and I fixed it, and I just tried to texture that putty a little bit. But before I did anything, I filled this with expandable foam. So you can see there, right there, it's just coming out. And that just way, it just gives the piece a little more rigidity. So I can handle it a little bit easier. So yeah, but see, that's one thing about doing prototypes. You find stuff out like that before it gets to production. Like, okay, we need to work on that area, make sure that area is a little more robust, you know? So it's better for it to happen to me while I'm doing the prototype, and I can tell the guys, hey, look, you may want to make sure that this is, you know, that the resin's poured a little thicker here, or just in general, make sure that there's enough thickness that when people go to pick this up, they're not poking holes in it. So yeah, so it's just, again, a quality control. So don't freak out. No one like start messaging me about, oh my gosh, this is like, I'm gonna be poking holes in. No, you're not. So like I said, it's better for me to find that out than later on. So I need to make some more room over here on my space. So what I'll do is when I start to do the rest of the steps, no, I'll try to do it myself. And last time I did my little action cam, and the sound of that thing sucks. Even when I put in a microphone, it's just the sound. I like the picture quality. I can shoot in. It's not a 4K camera. It's 1080. But it's great because you can see my whole booth when I'm working. The advantage of shooting with my phone is that I can get tighter. You can't get too tight with those action cams. Okay, I'm gonna get this just another light coat. Actually, you know what? I am gonna switch to my other airbrush since I am doing a whole light coat. I hadn't anticipated doing this, but see, I wing it, guys. I just go with the flow. It's like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then I change it. So I've got this really nice Iwata HPTH, and then basically it's a mini HVLP gun. Trigger, fan nozzle. So when I do this, I crank this up a little bit more. I wasn't able to use this previously once I first got it because I only had my little hobby air compressor. But now that I have this California air compressor, it puts out enough air. So I'm just giving a light coat, just so it's all the same color. And right now I'm looking at this in camera and it's really bright compared to what I'm seeing. So half the challenge is getting an exposure and trying to see if I can adjust the exposure on this while I'm shooting. I don't know if I can. I should be able to. No, I'm not sure. Anyway. Alright, so I'm already at like 18 minutes and I haven't spray painting. I'm just doing primer. So I'm going to do this and we'll come back. Okay, so while that styrene res is drying for a few minutes, I'm going to go over the colors that go into this green skin tone. Again, we're kind of, they liked what I did with Mad X Hulk. So we're kind of going in that direction. So the first thing I do is I go in with Mr. Color GX number 3. I go in real tight against the skin and I basically drop figure eights all over the skin. Once I do that, I do the same thing with Mr. Color 67 purple. I go in and I draw figure eights all over the skin. And what that does is it's gonna, between the green base coat and these two colors kind of intermixing together, it's gonna give it a really fleshy look. So one thing I was really proud about on the Mad X Hulk was how fleshy it looked. It just didn't look like green. It looked like a Caucasian person that had turned green. So it had a really nice fleshy undertone to it. And you get this, you really get that by doing these two colors and mixing them together and doing the figure eights. And I concentrate a little more on the shadow areas just to kind of, I start the shading this early. Once that's done, that's dried, I go in with Mr. Color GX or Mr. Color number 18 black green, and I thin that down and I hit the shadows and I bring the shadows down. After that's done, I go in with Mr. Color number 27. I hit all the highlights, and it's going to make them look really bright and kind of just really bright green. But again, if you ever watch me work, I bring it real down. I bring stuff down really dark, then I bring it up real light, and then I bring it down again, and then I kind of find the middle range. And by doing that with all those thin layers of paints, that's what gives it so much depth. It's just, it doesn't look so flat. So bring it up real bright with number 27 on the highlights. And then I go in, if I remember correctly, I go back in with the Mr. Color black green and I hit the veins a little bit. And if I have to hit the shadows a little bit more. And then to kind of tie it all together, I go in with Mr. Color 304 olive drab. I over thin this so it's really thin. Normal thinning ratio on this would be like 1.5 parts paint, 1.5 parts thinner to 1 part paint. I'll do this like 2 parts thinner, 1 part paint, maybe a little more so it's thinner. And I'll just mist it on real lightly. And then I'll look at it, and when I was doing the Mad X Hulk, after I showed Sonu after this step, he wanted it a little bit brighter. So I went in and I missed it on some color, Mr. Color GX 104 clear green, and that just brought it up. It just shifted the color. It didn't change the color, just shifted it. So again, it's a real fine balance between all these layers of paint, and just making sure it's consistent across the board. So I'm going to clean my airbrushes out. I'm going to let the Stynylrez res dry for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to go in and do the first noodling with the red. Alright, so the Stynylrez res has dried for about 10 minutes. Now I don't have my mic on, I just have it clamped to the side of the camera mount here. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. So like I said before, I've got Mr. Color GX number 3 in my airbrush. Got my PSI down to about, I don't know, 15 or so. And I've got my needle set, so basically that's all it's going to come out. And I'm going to do this over the whole skin. I'm going to do this, going to make figure eights like this. And the tighter I get, the more defined they are. So depending on how soft I want the effect, I can get close, I can get back up. So when I get into little shadow areas, I get tighter, like this, because it gets darker. As I get away from those, I loosen up. So I'm going to start on the feet, because those are relatively easy to handle. And I think I can show you what I'm doing. I'm not going to record the whole process, just because it takes a while, but I'll give you a sense of what's going on here. So what is the best way to do this? Again, there's no really easy way to hold this guy. Come down. Maybe I start here on the calf. A second. Okay, alrighty. So that's why I can at least kind of. Also, I want to make sure you can see what I'm doing. Alright. So I got my GX red. I'm going to come in here. Just do this. And it doesn't have to be neat. I may have gotten a little tight there on the calf, so if I see an area where I think I got too much, I just go back and I'll hit it with some more Stynylrez and then blend it in. But this will help simulate veins underneath the skin. See, I feel like I got a little too much paint there, so I'm going to hit that. When I'm done, I'll go back and hit that with some Stynylrez. It kind of takes me a minute or so to kind of get the flow. These are just really loose figure eights. They don't even look like figure eights, but that's kind of the motion I'm doing with my hand. My awesome $5 Amazon mic doesn't like to stay put. So I'll just do a little bit more of this and I'll do the whole thing, I'll come back. But I think you get the idea. Basically, I kind of want it to look like, kind of like this right here. You know, it's not all the same color, it's modeled a little bit. You know, skin is not the same color. I keep dropping the stupid mic. Really no good where to clamp it. Except for my lapel, and I don't want it on my lapel. Put it there. So, you know, skin has got, you know, it's got variation. And I hurt my left hand over the holidays pretty bad, actually. I was lifting a really heavy bag of trash outside, and I pulled something really, I heard something pop. I thought I broke my hand, but I think I pulled a tendon or something. And every time it starts to get better, I end up having to carry hold a big ass piece like this. They keep re-injuring it, so that's been fun. So there you go. So that's the idea with the red. So I'm gonna I'll do the rest on everything. I'll come back and show you what that looks like. All right, well, after about 30 minutes, I got the legs done, and it looks like he's kind of got leprosy or something, but that's okay, because we're just, again, this is just like an undertone. But yeah, you can kind of see all the little squiggly marks in there, and trick is just to make sure it's kind of even all over to the bottom of the feet too, and the toes and all that stuff. So now I'm gonna do the rest of the statue, and then we'll come back and do purple. So once all the red's done, I'll come back and show you the purple. Okay, so I got the torso done. We're getting pretty sick. Not so pretty right now, but don't worry. But you can kind of already see that this is gonna give it kind of all the undertones of veins and flesh and stuff underneath the greens that are gonna go on top. So I'll do the heads, and then we'll do purple. So I just want to show you real quick. So on the heads, I'm getting really, really close. I got barely any paint coming out, and I'm coming like super, super tight. Since the features are smaller, the veins would be tighter. So we're coming really, really tight here. I didn't change my air pressure. I just cranked the needle down so barely any paint could come out. And it's getting real tight here. And I make figure eights and squiggly marks. You know, it doesn't have to be all the same shape. And overlap them. Hopefully that's kind of showing up. Real tight. So you can see what's going on there. And I have to take a break every once in a while. My hand gets cramped up pretty good doing this. I tend to hold the airbrush really, really tight. It's just a habit I have, and I wish I could break it, but I have to take a break every few minutes. My hand gets really tired. That's how you do the heads. I'm also going to go ahead and spray a light coat of red on the inside of the mouth. I don't want to cover up all the green, but I just want to add a little red tint to it. I can do that now, and then I can always go back in later with a brush and kind of refine this, but I just wanted a solid green in there. So I'm going to add just a little bit of red, and I'll probably go back in and hand brush some other tones in there, but just a little bit. The light coat. Okay, so finally done with the red noodling. It takes a while. It's a very slow step. So now what I like to do is I like to look at all the pieces and see how close they are together. They don't have to be perfectly the same, but I want to make sure they're kind of consistent. So like I'm looking at these two guys right here, and this could use a little bit more of the treatment, just the hair. I'm just going to come in here and kind of do a little bit more. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I want it to be semi-consistent between all the heads. And this is the last one I sprayed too, so this will dry down a little bit actually. So look at these two together. See how these look. Those look pretty damn close. So we're good there. And now I want to look at the legs and the torso together. sorry, I had to go get them. So I want to look at these together and see if my technique is consistent between these two areas. And looking at that, it looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. Now you'll notice that there's splotchy in some areas, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect all the way around because, you know, skin, it's gonna be a little splotchy here and there. So now I'm gonna do the same thing but with purple. And the purple I don't do quite as much. So I'm gonna clean out my airbrush and I'll be right back. All right, so now I got that Mr. Color number 67 purple. My brush, thinned it down 1 part paint to 1.5 parts thinner. And again, we're gonna go in there, we're just gonna do a bunch of figure eights like this and some squiggles. I'll do a little bit on camera and then just do the rest off camera. Try to get situated here so you can see what I'm doing. Alright. So kind of the same thing. And again, I don't do the purple as much as the red. So it's kind of hard to see because I got that light on the top, but you kind of see there on the calf what's happening. This is kind of what the look we're going for. So I'm going to do that to everything and we'll come back. One thing I wanted to mention on the purple is that I'm coming in tighter with the airbrush, which means I'm getting a finer line, but I'm doing a looser pattern. So if you can see it here, I'm coming in close, but I'm doing a looser pattern. So I'm kind of doing this, you know, just kind of real fine lines. But I'm doing a much looser squiggler number 8. And this is really giving a good sense of veins underneath the surface. So I'm not sure if that's showing up in camera, but this technique's really fun because you're doing it, it looks, oh man, this looks like complete shit. It looks really messy. But as you get there and you start doing more and you just start laying it on top, it really looks like the guy's skin has been ripped off and all you're seeing are his veins. It's really cool. So it's a really nice effect to put down before you start doing your top colors. And if you notice, you still see the green primer underneath. So we're gonna be able to see that all the way through this whole process, which will give this guy a lot of depth and a lot of fleshiness. So I just want to mention that I'm closer to the surface but doing a looser pattern. Okay, so I got done with the purple. Looks really good. So what I would do is I want to put these heads on the torso just to make sure that we're kind of matching as far as how much we got going on. And I think it looks pretty damn good. Yeah, this is going to look really sharp. He looks like he's been beaten up and bruised, but that's okay because if you think about it, what's a bruise? Well, a bruise is pop blood vessels, and this is exactly what these are supposed to do. They're supposed to represent blood vessels under the skin. So basically what we've done, what has taken me approximately 2.5 hours, 3 hours, is I've laid in blood vessels, and it looks really, really freaking good. So I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit because I want it to dry down. It gets darker a little bit. The next step is we're gonna go in and do the initial shadows, and that's gonna be with Mr. Color number 18 black green, and we'll thin it down and we'll go in. And this first step is when you're gonna see all the details in the sculpt, because I'll go in and I'll hit every little shadow, all the wrinkles in the knuckles. We'll do all the wrinkles in the knuckles, all the muscles and everything. It was funny when I when I was doing Sony's Mad X Hulk, and I sent them like the first you know, photo for approval on the skin. He thought I added details to the sculpt. Like, no man, they're there. I just highlighted them with the paint. So oh, good news, the new head magnet is facing the right direction, so yay on that. So I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit, and then we're gonna come back and do the initial shadows. All right, next color in the cup is Mr. Color number 18 black green, and we're gonna start bringing out some of these details in this piece. So I got this in my airbrush. I mixed it a little thinner than I normally would, just a hair. So again, I don't want to cover up all the work I've done. I want to be able to still see it, but I want to start adding the shadows. So I'm gonna again, I'll show you kind of on the feet and legs, and then I'll do the rest. Because the tricky part about this is when they did the proto, I can tell that at least I think, I could be wrong. Could be wrong. It looks like maybe the foot was casted separately then put into the pants, but maybe not. It kind of, in some areas it looks like it was a separate piece and glued together, in other areas it doesn't, so I'm not sure. Painting wise, it would have been easier if the legs were separate from the pants, but a lot of times what the factories will do is they will, areas that needs to fit a certain way, they'll get them and they'll pre-assemble it. Sometimes they do the whole thing, which I don't like because it makes it hard to paint. So we're gonna go in here and let's see, I got my PSI about 15, 10, 15. And fortunately, the way my light is, it's gonna be hard for you guys to see. I'm gonna start in here on the bottom of the foot. And we're gonna start with this little crease. Just like that. This foot has a lot of detail in it, which is pretty cool because you're not even going to see it. I actually may thin this paint down a little bit more. But I'm starting to see that. Yeah, I think I'm gonna thin this down just a little bit more, just a hair. I'm gonna pour it back in my cup here, my mixing cup, and add a little more thinner to it. I'd rather have it too thin, and have to add more layers. Go a little bit more. So basically what I have now is 2 part thinner to 1 part paint. Maybe a little bit over that. Yeah, that was too thick, I could tell right there. It's a good thing I tested it out on the bottom of the foot. So I thinned this down a little bit more. This step will take a very long time. There's a lot of detail in this piece. And so I'm just putting in these little fine lines. hardly any paint's coming out. The deeper the recess or the shadow, I hit it harder. Closer to the surface it is, I don't hit it as hard. I also vary my distance from the surface, so like when it's a really tight crease like this, I get close. When it's an open crease, kind of like this, I back off a little bit. Create the softer edge. I need to clean my airbrush. It's feels like it's clogged. So I go in and I hit all the little tight areas first, and then I'll back off and do the bigger kind of shadows. If that makes sense. So that pretty much takes care of like the wrinkle part. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to back off. I'm going to just kind of lightly hit this lower part of the foot. Actually, I could have hit this wrinkle a little bit more. And I hit these wrinkles first because they're lower on the skin, on the surface of the skin. And then when I go to do the other areas, they'll just kind of get a little bit darker naturally. Get back my needle off a little bit. Yeah, I need to clean my airbrush, it's getting clogged. So I'm going to come back here, I'm going to kind of hit the bottom here. It's looking really red in camera, it's not that red. Real thin so I don't cover up all that noodling I did. I want to still see that. But I just want to see it just under the surface. I don't want it like obvious. You can see here, just already starting to get some shape. Now, because the way this foot is on here, it's going to be really hard to get paint in this area to get my airbrush in there, so that's going to be tricky. But so, I can see, but yeah, it's really red in camera, but it's not really that red. And this foot hasn't had any shading done on it yet. So this is the very initial shading of the shadows. So I'll probably do this. I'll probably get this part done tonight and let it dry down, so I can actually see what it looks like. Because whenever I do a major step, especially with the Mr. Color paints, I like to let it dry overnight because it does darken, and my shading it's easier to see what my shading's doing. It's hard to explain unless you spray these paints, but as they darken, the shading becomes more pronounced as it dries down. So a lot of times if I do like a major shading step, like kind of like this, I'll actually let it dry overnight. Or if I get it done early in the morning, I'll let it dry till the evening, let it dry 12 hours or so. This is where we start going in and defining all the shapes. Be a hard part to get my airbrush into. I also want to try to shade. I may have to do some shading in this area with some pigments or pastels, just because it's going to be, to get my airbrush in the angle that I need, I really need the foot to be detached from it. But I'm going to try. See how I back off there? I don't know, the light's pretty harsh. I back off, I get a nice soft edge, and it creates a bigger muscle. And then on the tighter muscles, you get in tighter, it creates a tighter muscle, smaller muscle. Like the calves, it's a big muscle, back off, let it fan up. But I think you get the idea. If you want to watch the whole process, you can always go watch the Mad X Hulk build. So I did a really pretty in-depth build series on that, which is showing all these same steps. can already start to see the shapes coming out. Getting some definition and some stuff here. Anyway, very slow process, but there you can kind of start to get a sense of what we're doing. Again, he's looking really red in camera, but you can kind of see the shading going on there. On that side where we got a little shading going on, and over here we haven't done anything yet. So anyway, I'm going to do this. It'll probably take me 4 or 5 hours to get all this shading done and everything, and then I'll come back and take a look at it. But this I'll probably get this done. I'll probably only do this tonight because it's already 11 o'clock here, and I've been trying to be good and go to bed at a decent time, even though I didn't get any painting done during the week. The days of staying up till 2 in the morning during the week, I've got to stop that because I'm like a zombie during the day at work, and you know. So everything gets done eventually. I get stuff done eventually, you know. So anyway, so yeah, when I'm gonna continue doing this, see how far I get tonight, and then the next step I'll show you what this looks like after it's all done, and then we'll go in and add the highlight. So he's gonna look really funny after the shadow. He's gonna look really kind of like with dark stripes everywhere. And we're on that the highlight. That's gonna make him look even more weird because he'll have really bright highlights and really dark shadows. But then at the end, we'll blend it all together, and then we'll start blending it and refining everything. But as I said, I like to go dark and then really bright, and then bring it back down, and then kind of find the middle ground. That's kind of my style, I guess. If I have a style, I don't know if I have a style. It's hard to get paint where I need it with it together. We're gonna do our best to get it there. So his calf muscles are gonna back way off. We got a pretty decent shadow at the pant line. If I can get my airbrush to it. It's hard. Guys can probably see what I'm doing. See, when I'm doing stuff like this, it's hard to video because I need to be able to see what I'm doing. At the same time, I want to make sure whoever's watching can see what I'm doing, but it's really hard because, to be honest, it's more important that I do what I need to do. Make sure that I'm doing it correctly. Ow. Freaking hand. Yeah, that's starting to look good already. This is a little bit of work I've done so far. It's looking good. Alright, so I'll come back when I'm done with all this. I wanted to show you a little bit of doing the heads, the shading. So what I've done on my airbrush is I've taken the needle guard off, so now my needle is bare, and I've thinned the paint down even more, because what I'm doing is I'm getting super close to the surface. Now when you see these, they're going to look really weird. I've already done two. But taking the needle guard off allows me to get really almost right on top of the surface and get in tight and get all those wrinkles and stuff. So I'm able to get like right on top of it, especially like in tight areas like this. I just get in real tight and just get right in that crevice. It takes a few more passes because I thin my paint down more, but it allows me to pinpoint those shadows. I'm about an inch away from the surface, and I'll even get closer when I'm doing a really tight area, like right here on the bridge of the nose. And like right underneath the nose. And like in the ears, I get super close. Not sure if you guys can see that or not, but the tiniest amount of pink coming out allows me to get right up in those little crevices, bringing in those details. There's no reason why this process takes so long, because there's actually a lot of details in these sculpts that until you start throwing paint and primer on it, you really can't see them. They start popping out as soon as you start painting them. And then when I do like a big area like this cheek, I just back out and make a like a nice soft shadow. And I can just, like I said before, the bigger the shadow, the bigger the shadow, the further away from the surface I am, the tighter the shadow. I get real close and try to pinpoint it. And then I also hit a little darkness around the hairline here. Helps blend that into the face a little bit. This head doesn't have as many wrinkles as the other two, like in the brow. There's fewer wrinkles, and plus the hair's covering it up, so it's hard to see them. Like just hit that shadow a little bit, hit this one. Again, get real tight to the ear. Get paint down in there. He's looking bruised and battered right now. But again, don't forget, this is just the initial shadows. After this step, we're going to go in and we're going to put in those really bright highlights. And then he'll look really weird. And then we'll blend it all together. But there you go. That's how we do the heads. Okay, and like I said, I keep saying we're going to wait till I'm done with this, but another thing I want to show you is, again, I'm not sure if this will show up in camera. So I want to highlight all these wrinkles in the knuckles. So what I do is I actually hold the airbrush with two hands. I got the needle guard off, and this allows me to steady my hand a little more because I'm pretty shaky as it is. I just come in here and I draw. A little paint coming out real close. And I get right in there on each of those wrinkles. Like that. Takes about 3 or 4 passes, a few more, since the paint's so thin. It helps me bring out the details in those little wrinkles. I'm getting a little bit of dry tipping, which is weird because this is a lacquer and I usually don't get dry tipping with a lacquer. It's right inside those crevices. Hopefully you can see that. And then like these fingers have a crap load of wrinkles. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick out all of those. Really just more of the knuckles because they're so well detailed. Now this is the part of the fist that hits the rocks and it'll get beat up, you know. It's just part of this part of the statue will get beat up. I'll put a lot of protective top coat on it, but more than likely the paint will rub off just from putting this together and taking it apart and stuff like that. So, but anyway, that's why I do. I get real close, hold it with two hands. It allows you to get real tight and stay steady. Okay, finally got all the shadows done. That took a very long time. I tried to do a live broadcast, but he looked way dark on live, so I just stopped. So the next color in the cup is Mr. Color number 27, Interior Green. So now we're going to add some highlights, and he's going to look even more weird by the time I'm done with this. Again, I have my paint kind of over thinned a little bit. I don't want it too opaque, so I'm going to be able to see through everything. And we're going to start adding highlights. And I'm going to back off, so I want this to kind of blend into everything. I'll get in tighter on the smaller areas, like right here. See that? This is when we really start to bury all that kind of noodling that was done the very first step. Again, it's doing a real light, still want to be able to see through all that paint. So you can see where it's a tighter area, I get in close. Where it's looser, I back up. Now we're really starting to look like something. This step takes a while too. There's no fast way of doing this stuff, at least not for me. You can't see what I'm doing because I'm in the back of the lake here. foot's hard to paint because I can't get the airbrush where I really need it. It's attached, unfortunately. I'll do this foot on camera and then I'll do the rest off, but again, you'll get the idea. Same techniques as the shadows, just I'm hitting all the high spots instead of the low spots. I have to sometimes not worry about the camera and just worry about painting, because if I try to get everything on film, then I can't do what I got to do. Yeah, it's looking good. That first step of shadowing always kind of freaks me out. It's like, man, this looks like real shit. As soon as I started putting the highlights in, I'm like, man, I can tell what's gonna get a real good sense of what we're gonna look like. Excuse me. So that's kind of the idea, just going in and adding the highlights. So I'll do that to everything else. Okay, after a couple hours of spraying again, we got the highlights done. So it's looking kind of stripy and stuff, but that's okay because we're going to blend this all in. And I'm trying to think of it. I think last time on the Mad X Hulk, I went in and I did the veins first before I did the blending. I can't remember. I think I did. I think I went back in with the green black a little bit and hit the veins a little bit, and also maybe the shadows, just kind of hit the shadows one more time. I'm gonna do that real quick. Dump this paint out. Do just a quick rinse out of my airbrush. I'm not really gonna clean it too much. Put a little thinner through it real quick. Okay, like that. And I still have the black green mixed up somewhere. Come on, I gotta find the right bottle. It's this one. So I got the black green again in here. The same mix as before, that over thin kind of consistency. and like work on these veins a little bit. You can see I'm kind of letting it fan off to the sides. Yeah, just like that. Sorry for the shaky camera. It's attached to my spray booth, which is shaking. Because of the fan. Man, the real trick of a piece this big is just handling it. It's so massive. It's not even as big as the Mad X Hulk. So basically I'm going to do that to the veins, and then maybe I'll just hit a couple of the little shadows. There's a couple of shadows where I went a little too heavy with the highlighting, and it bled a little too much into the shadows. I don't mind that it bleeds in there a little bit, so that's just kind of natural, but I want to go back and maybe hit a few more of them again just to bring them back a little bit. So all these steps that we're doing right now could be considered just the base colors again, because we haven't done any blending of everything yet. So this is, you know, all these steps is just a setup to do the main color. A lot of time. You can see I'm kind of backed off. I'm just letting it be a soft line. So what it does is it creates a natural shadow around the vein. Kind of let it fan off like that. Alright, so I'm going to do that and then I'll come back. Okay, so got the veins done. I went back and hit some of the shadows again just to kind of bring those back a little bit, and we're looking good. So now the next step is to start blending all this in. So I'm just going to do it on the head at first, and I'm going to do it on the head that isn't going to be used, so I can show you, I can test it out. So give me a second to put these legs down. One second. Trying to put the feet down. I'm going to move these towels out of the way so my bottom fan will actually do some work. Those out of the way. And what's in my airbrush right now is Mr. Color 304 Olive Drab. And this we're just gonna fan this on and start blending everything in. We're gonna test it on this head. and see what it looks like. And bump my PSI up a little bit, about 20. I gotta put my respirator on because it's gonna put paint out, quite a bit of paint. So it's looking pretty good, and that'll actually dry down a little bit, so I'm going to stick with that right there. I think it looks good. We'll let it dry down, and I'm going to do the rest of the parts like this. We'll let it dry down, I'll hit it with some flat coat, and then go from there. So when I did the Matte X Hulk, after this I did a little bit of transparent green. It brightened it up just a hair. I may do that too, but let's do everything with the olive drab first. So then what I do is I check it with the last one I did to see how close we're looking, and we're looking pretty similar. So I'm going to use this as my guide, as a test, you know, to compare against. I'm going to leave him over here on the booth. Hopefully he doesn't get dinged. I still want to use him even though he's like really not the right head. Yeah, it's looking really good. So what this does is it darkens the shadows a little bit. It darkens the highlights a little bit. Actually, sorry, it brings up, and what it does is all that noodling I did, it kind of blends that in. You can still see it, but you don't see the lines. You know, you don't see all the little figure eights I did. So what it does, it gives a lot of nice tonality differences in all the different shadows and highlights and stuff. Just like your skin, you know, your skin's not, all the highlights don't have the same tone, and the shadows don't all the same tone. There's a bunch of variation in there. So doing all that noodling ahead of time, which takes freaking forever, still shines through after you do all this. It looks really, really amazing. So we'll keep going. think it's looking real good. So let's look at this leg. This I just kind of blended in. And if you look at the other one that hasn't been blended in, quite a difference. It really just ties it all together. So all that work before, you know, was getting ready to basically, in preparation to spray our midtone, which is what this is. So when you do your highlighting and shading before, and then do your midtone, it just kind of ties it all together better. It's not so harsh looking. It looks more natural as far as like shading goes. I think it looks more natural. Just kind of. You notice I haven't done anything with the toenails yet. I'm going to hand paint those later. They're not going to be yellow like the Mad X Hulk, don't worry. Yellow nails were a request from Sonu, which I like and he likes them, but it's all that matters. We're going to go with a kind of a dirty bone look here. Really good. Really happy with this. Hope what my client is, because it's looking really good. Yeah, really nice olive green kind of skin tone going on here. Nice highlighting, nice shadows. This is a fun step because, as I said, as I'm working on this, when I'm doing those other steps, like in my mind, I'm constantly thinking like, this looks like shit, this looks like shit, this looks like shit. And then in the end, it all comes together. So this is like a really fun step in this process because all that pre-work really shines through once you start blending it together. Now on this one, it'll be imperative that I match the blending that I did on the heads, obviously, because they're going to be attached. The legs can be off a hair, especially since you got the pants and everything, but you know, you want them as close as possible. And you can see I'm fanning it on. I'm not really painting it, I'm fanning it on. That fanning it makes it go on thinner. It makes sure it goes on in a more even pattern. If I was trying to paint it, like really paint it, it would look all splotchy and stripy. So I'm fanning it on, just lightly misting it on and just letting it do its thing. So a good example of what this misting does, and bring this down a little bit. So right here you can still kind of see the noodling and the actual lines from noodling, that red and purple. But watch this as I start to blend it. It'll just kind of melt in, it'll just melt underneath the skin. It just starts getting buried underneath that skin. You don't see the lines, but you see the tones. That's what we want. And I'm also fanning in all different directions, not just one way. I'm going back and forth all around. And you also notice that the veins are really dark right now, but putting this mid-tone actually brightens them up a little bit, makes them blend better. I'm not sure if it shows up in camera, but you can look at the arms, the difference. This side's been blended. See how nice and soft all those shadows and highlights. So over here looks really stripy, really contrasting. See, really dark shadow, really bright highlight, and you see all those lines from the noodling. Over here, it's all been blended in. Look how soft those shadows look and how soft the highlights are. That's all that pre-work and then the blending. That's why I don't just do one color and then like add the shadows, because you get this look. Or do one color and just do the highlights, you get this look. We want this look over here, nice and soft. So anywhere, hold on. So anywhere that I've like blended before and I can see an area where maybe I see the noodling too much, I'll hit that area again. And just try to soften that up. Again, we don't want to see all my little noodling, we just want to see the tones from it. And the variations that it gives us underneath all this. So that's the idea. I gotta mix up some more paint. I'll do all that and we'll take, and then I'm gonna let it dry and then take a look at it after that. Okay, so it's dried down and I hit them with a flat coat and they're looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead, I thought about not doing this clear green step, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And what it'll do is it'll knock some of this yellow tint down a little bit, because you're still seeing a little bit of that interior green a little too much, but you can really see all those different tones I got going on in here. It's looking really, really, man, I just love this technique. It just looks really fleshy. We're gonna add just a little more green to it, and it's gonna be real simple. Hold on one second. Let me get rid of this interior green paint that put this way, so I don't waste it. These little Mr. Color bottles are like $4 a pop. Hobby paints are crazy expensive for what you get. So I'm just going to spray this out real quick. I'm not even going to clean out my airbrush. I really don't. It's okay if it gets mixed in there a little bit. And we're going to do this clear green. I'm not wearing the mic. I just have it clipped right here to the phone, so hopefully you guys can hear me still. And for that, I'm just going to need a stick. And this will be the same technique as we did with the interior green. We're just going to mist it on. We're just going to shift the color. That's all we're doing. We're just shifting it. We're not changing it. Mix this 2 to 1. This is Mr. Color GX Clear Green. Number 104, in case you want to know. I actually need to over thin it a little bit. I basically just want to tint the parts. I don't want to change the color. Side. I get my airbrush a really good cleaning tonight at the end because I'm painting non-stop. Took a little break today. Okay, so let's get the head that's the test head right here. And we're just going to mist this on. Again, we're not going to put a lot on, just a little bit. That's really about it. Don't know if we need any more than that. So it's like one mist coat. It may not be easy to see in the camera because the lighting's not the best for videography, but this, let me see if I can hold this differently. If I can shade some of the light. So the one on the left has a little more green to it. You can kind of tell right there, and it's just a hair. What it did is just knock down the yellow tint just a little bit. That's all we need. We don't need a lot. thought I might have to go back in and hit the shadows again. I think these are going to look just fine. Looking pretty good. Even the bottom of the feet look really good. That you're never going to see. Handling this thing is a major pain in the ass, I can tell you that. It's so hard to maneuver. luckily the paint dries basically instantly. I can kind of paint one side, move it, and hold it from where the spot I just painted. Since I'm putting it on so light. See one little spot here, I probably need to blend a little bit more. My mid-tone. Or this knuckle. Don't drop this, take it outside. Alright, let me put a head on and see how it looks. Compared to the body. I think we're looking pretty good. Matches really well. Okay, so I see one little bright spot right here. I'm going to hit that again with my mid-tone. And another little spot right here. But for the most part, I think this is ready to flat coat and get approval. So we'll do that, and then hopefully they'll approve it. Now, I may not get approval till tomorrow because they're on the other side of the world. So we'll see. But it's looking really good so far. So probably what I'll do is if I don't hear back from them on the approval and everything looks good, I'll work on the base a little bit tonight, which is the stonework. Hopefully I get that knocked out. I don't think the base will take too long, actually. Well, every time I say that, stuff takes me 3 times as long as I think. So the next thing on this, if it's approved, is I'll do the fingernails and I'll do the pants. And then after that, I can put them together as one piece. I can glue them together and it'll be one piece. But I don't know if I want to do that. I have decided it's easier to put them together on the base separately, or I don't know. I'm afraid to really try to put them together after I've got them painted because of all the rubbing that goes on with the cape and stuff. So we'll have to look at it. But it's looking good. So I think I'm going to call this work in progress done. It's pretty long, but it's the same. It's looking good. I think I'm happy with this. So there you go. So maybe I'll start another video tonight on the base to show you that. Again, it's the same techniques I use on a lot of stuff, just different colors. So as always, this is Matt Mrozek. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time. Bye.